Hello, I'm Nigel Howard. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. Not necessarily the frozen north. It's nice out there. It's beautiful. Anyway, I've been working as a deaf interpreter for quite some time now. I also have experience in a vast number of the areas in the field: mental health, medical, you name it. So here's a brief little bio on me. So I interpret in my local community, such as court or mental health environments. I have some experience with the national conferences. There's an agency, an event in Canada that I work in. I've worked in the World Federation for the Deaf. I've worked with them. I've worked with WASLI. This sort of we take into consideration everyone's perspective, mine, yours, uh, the hearing interpreter's role, the deaf interpreter's role, but we never really consider the differences when we work together and we team between the deaf interpreter and the hearing interpreters. We don't really know if we even have the same views on teaming together whatsoever. We might have fundamentally different perspectives. We're not really sure. We need to figure out how to incorporate those and collaborate and work as an effective team. We need to make sure that we're able to facilitate communication for all parties involved by working together. Some people might be wondering why a deaf interpreter would be necessary. Is this a new field? Yes, the answer to that is yes, it is a new profession. And the key point there is it's a new profession. Deaf interpreters have been around for many years. Deaf peers would be helping each other in school sometimes when their peers would be falling behind. Another deaf student might step in and be a quote-unquote deaf interpreter and help interpret that information. But now we have different trainings, we have different skill development activities. We don't have much, but it is in the developmental phase. Sometimes people think if there's a deaf interpreter present, it means the other interpreters aren't competent. They're thinking, oh, if I have a deaf interpreter with me, does that mean the deaf community is going to think I'm not good enough and my skills are inadequate? Or will it implicate that I have nothing to offer, that maybe I'm doubting myself and I'm not sure of myself? But on the other hand, if you don't have a deaf interpreter, does it mean, oh, well, I'm enough and I don't need the aid of a deaf interpreter? There are different things to unpack from this whole notion. So some people, as if I am in a situation, they might think, people might be resistant to the idea of a deaf interpreter, thinking, oh, I've known you since you were young, you've just been in the deaf community, and they know my background. They might not take me seriously as a professional deaf interpreter. I mean, maybe we have a little bit of history, and they think, they don't really like me. Some people might think, oh, you became a deaf interpreter? Huh. Are you going to, keep all interpreted information confidential? Maybe I think if a hearing interpreter is present, my skills are inadequate. So there's all different angles we can take on this. As far as the deaf community goes, when a deaf interpreter is there, they might think, oh, do you guys bring a deaf interpreter in here because I am mentally incompetent? Maybe if there's always a deaf interpreter, they wouldn't have an issue. Kind of like I just said, sometimes a deaf person will see a deaf interpreter and say, oh no, you're heavily in the community. I don't really trust you. You know too much about my background. I'm not comfortable with you. They might have an issue or sort of conflict of interest. They might ask, where do you have training? Where have you received your training? Do you have training regarding your specific interpreter role? Right now, RID has 16 hours that have been recognized. People might ask, was that 2 years or 4 years? Hours, what does that mean? And I know those are going to increase as the years come, but how do the numbers compare to years? People are always comparing, various interpreters' backgrounds and the professions. That's usual. Hearing interpreters might think, oh, there's a deaf interpreter here, but I've studied for years and years, and now there's a deaf interpreter here who just got certified, or they have a DI, or, a deaf interpreter or something. They might think, okay, well, maybe the deaf interpreter is better than me. That's one perspective. The deaf interpreting community might think, oh, or their skills aren't really that great, or they're not involved enough in the community, and there might be some doubt there. Oh, yes, it's right here on the screen. The deaf interpreting community is small, and when there's a new deaf interpreter who joins that community, they haven't been involved in the community as they were growing up, or maybe, they have great interpreting skills, but they really struggle with the ethics of roles. They might be able to say, oh, I'm certified, I have my certification. I have that C part of the CDI. Oh, I'm a certified interpreter. That means I'm okay to work in all settings. That's good. Yes, it's good that you're certified. Sometimes hearing interpreters will say, oh, I'm certified. Or I prefer to just say interpreter. I prefer hearing interpreters say, I'm an interpreter, and they leave the certified out of it. And same with deaf interpreters.